الحمد لله العلي الأكرم الذي علم الإنسان بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه والتابعين لهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So inshallah ta'ala we're going to be continuing our lessons of the Kitab Al-Waraqaat by Abi Ma'ali Al-Juwayni rahimahullah ta'ala. And in the previous lesson we discussed a number of topics, and so far we are now closer to the end of the book. And we've discussed a number of topics from almost most of the major topics of Usul al-Fiqh. We've discussed adilla, evidences, what can be used as an evidence and what cannot. We've discussed the Quran, we've discussed the Sunnah, we've discussed Ijma'. We've also looked into the awamir and the nawahi, the commands and the prohibitions, aam, khas, general, specific. We've looked into if there is a conflict between different evidences, how do we resolve it, and other topics, alhamdulillah. And inshallah ta'ala now we're going to be continuing with the book and we're going to be discussing another major topic. And perhaps this is the last major topic of the book before the ending of the book inshallah ta'ala, which is the chapter of Al-Qiyas, analogy. And inshallah ta'ala our brother will read and we'll continue with the commentary inshallah ta'ala. فليتفضل مشكورا مأجورا.
أحسن الله إليك. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم اغفر لنا ولشيخنا وللحاضرين والسامعين وللمسلمين أجمعين. قال المصنف رحمه الله: القياس. وأما القياس فهو رد الفرع إلى الأصل في الحكم بعلة تجمعهما، وهو ينقسم إلى ثلاثة أقسام: قياس علة، وقياس دلالة، وقياس شبه. فقياس العلة ما كانت العلة فيه موجبة للحكم، وقياس الدلالة هو الاستدلال بأحد النظرين على الآخر، وهو أن تكون العلة دالة على الحكم ولا تكون موجبة للحكم. وقياس الشبه هو الفرع المتردد بين أصلين، فيلحق بأكثرهما شبها به ولا يسار إليه مع إمكان ما قبله.
Ahsan. The Shaykh now he speaks about Al-Qiyas. Al-Qiyas is one of the evidences that are agreed upon. We said in our religion we have 4 evidences that are agreed upon. Muttafaqun alayha. Number 1, Quran. Number 2, Sunnah. Number 3, Ijma'. And number 4 is Qiyas. The Qiyas that we look into, which is an evidence in our Sharia, is what is called Al-Qiyas As-Sahih. Correct or valid Qiyas. What this removes is invalid Qiyas. Now what is invalid Qiyas? It's what Iblis did. When he said, أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُمْ, I am better than Adam. خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. I am better than Adam alayhi salam. You created me from fire and you created Adam alayhi salam from mud or clay. This is a qiyas that is fasid. And some scholars they say غَيْرُ مُعْتَبَرٍ. So it's a qiyas that is invalid. So the qiyas that concerns us, that is an evidence in the Sharia, is what? Qiyas sahih, valid qiyas, not invalid qiyas. And again, the response to this qiyas fasid by Iblis, the scholars have responded to it. Who knows the ways to respond to this qiyas that is fasid? When Iblis said to Adam, I am better than Adam. I'm created from fire and Adam is created from clay. How do you respond? To your mukhalif, to your opponent here, Iblis.
Mud can extinguish fire.
Mud can extinguish fire. The fire can burn mud. Does fire not burn human beings?
Yeah.
So fire better.
No.
So Iblis is right. Okay. So how do you respond? Tell him. Good. But then he's saying he's better. You're right. Iblis has no taqwa aslan. Iblis is no ibadah, nothing. So there's many ways that the scholars responded to it. The first way is, as the brothers mentioned, number 1, Iblis is not a good person aslan. He has no ibadat. That compared to somebody who does worship Allah, there is no There's no comparison. One is like the day, one is like the night. The other response is, as the brother mentioned, from the quality of fire is it destroys things and burns things. And from the quality of mud and dirt, dust and earth is what? It allows things to grow and nurture. And even then we say to Iblis, for the sake of argument, if we say fire is better than mud, Iblis is not all of fire. Iblis is a part of fire, is a form of fire or a part of fire. Who said all of the fire is better than all of the mud? You may be the worst of fire, sah? So there's many ways that the scholars respond to this, inshaAllah ta'ala. And kulli hal, this is a qiyas that is fasid, and that's not an evidence in our religion. The qiyas that is valid, and it is an evidence in our religion, is what? Qiyas sahih, that is valid. Now, the ways that we're going to speak about qiyas is a number of topics. Number one, the importance of al-qiyas. The ahmiyya, the importance, write it down. Number one, the importance of qiyas. Number two, the evidence is to show us that qiyas is an evidence. How do we know qiyas is an evidence in our religion? Evidences for that, proofs for that. That's number two. Number three is the definition of qiyas. Ta'rif. The definition of qiyas. Number four is some examples of qiyas. Certain examples of qiyas for you to understand. Number five, the pillars of qiyas. Number six, the types of qiyas. So how many points are we going to discuss? 6 points. Number one is the importance of qiyas. Ibn al-Hajib, who has a book on Usul al-Fiqh, he said, إِنَّ الْقِيَاسَ مِيزَانُ الْعُقُولِ. Qiyas is the distinguisher of intellect. وَمَيْدَانُ الْفُحُولِ. And it's the realm of the giants. So qiyas is the place where you start to determine who has intellect and who has understanding of the religion and who doesn't. And some of the scholars, when it came to define qiyas, to show you the importance of the qiyas, they define qiyas by saying huwa al-ijtihad. It is ijtihad. As if to say the whole of independent reasoning comes back to qiyas. Quran and Sunnah, yes, it requires independent reasoning, but qiyas is where it distinguishes everyone. This is where it's important, this is where it matters. Why? In qiyas, what is happening is you have a ruling on the sharia where we don't have a ruling about it. It's a ruling that the scholars refer to as al-muskuti anhu. We don't know a ruling in it. You're using something where we have an evidence and then comparing it to something we don't have an evidence to bring about a ruling. And in this is, number one, it's a big responsibility, and number two, it's a big feature and a big action that you're taking, and number three, it's also very dangerous. Why is it dangerous? Because you may end up speaking about the religion of Allah in a way that is not correct. Example, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, الذهب بالذهب هاء وهاء. Gold is with gold, meaning if you want to transfer and exchange gold with gold, there's two things that the scholars necessitate. Number one, it is at-tamathul, which is you have to be the same type, and number two, it is al-qabd, meaning it is in person, you have to give it and receive it. Gold. Number two, al-burru bil-burr riba. The Prophet said, burr and burr is riba. Number four, tamr, dates and dates is riba. Number four, al-sha'ir wal-sha'ir riba. And number five and number four, these are the four. So the Prophet told us categories where riba does fall into. Now, someone might come and say, if I exchange one bag of rice with another bag of rice, but the quality is different, and I exchange it not in person, online, or I make an agreement with a person, I give you one bag of my rice, old rice, you give me one bag of your rice. But after a period of time, this is riba, or not. This is where the difference of opinion is. This is where you require qiyas. Why? The first thing you have to determine is why are those categories mentioned in the hadith, the four of them, why is there riba in them? What's common between them? Gold, wheat, barley, and dates. What's common in them? What's the illah? What's the reasoning why they have riba in them? What do you guys say?
It's most common for people to trade with these forms of
People trade with other things as well.
That's not, it wouldn't be as common as like the gold.
So if I trade with water, and water is a common trade, then can I say riba enters it? Or fruits? All fruits riba enter? Fruits is a common trade, sah? So does the riba enter it? Fine. What made you determine that there's a lot of cheating? Was not exactly, no. So the scholars discuss this issue. A group of scholars, they say, number one, these are things that are muddakhar, you can store them, and they're also commodity, meaning they have value behind them. Some of them say, no, they're mat'um, they're eaten, but then gold is one of them, but gold you can't eat. But then they say, no, you can't go eat gold directly, but you can use the wealth of gold to eat. So there's a difference of opinion. The point is, if you determine that this is riba in them, and then you say, as a result, in rice, which is something not mentioned in the Sharia, there is riba, then you can apply a lot of rulings regarding that. And as a result, you may go right and you may go wrong. And that's why if you're, and qiyas, the whole chapter of qiyas relies on two things. It relies on, number one, understanding what the reasoning behind a hukum is. Why was this haram and why is this halal? Why was this recommended? The reasoning behind it is very important. And narrowing it down, that's basically half of your job done. Once you've done that, the second step and the second main part is tahqiq, and trying to make sure that in this new issue you have the illah in it as well. The new issue has the same illah, the same reasoning as the original issue. Those are the two main parts. So if your qiyas is weak, then your ruling is incorrect. Your ruling is incorrect. So again, it's a very important chapter. Very, very, very important. And this is like, as Ibn Hajib said, this is where the intellects differ. You start to understand how he's done good qiyas, he's got good intellect. He's smart, he knows his usul al-fiqh. The other person, he's weak. He didn't even understand how to extract the illah, so not good. Okay? So that's the importance of al-qiyas. Number two is the evidences of qiyas. What is the evidence that qiyas is a hujjah? We have evidences from the Quran, we have evidences from the hadith, and we have evidences from the actions of the companions, radiallahu anhum. The evidence from the Quran is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Hadid, لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ. We have sent our messages with the evidences. وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. We've sent with them the books. وَالْمِيزَانِ. وَالْمِيزَانِ, the scholars they say, is qiyas. We've sent the scales with the Prophet means what? Qiyas. This is where you start to determine. This qiyas is what? A scale. You start to say, look, there's a reasoning here, and you start to judge everything based on that same scale that you have in front of you. So it's called Mizan al-Qiyas. And from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet used Qiyas in his time. And the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, in hadith Abi Hurairah in Bukhari and Muslim, a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, O Messenger of Allah, وُلِدَ لِي غُلَامٌ أَسْوَدٌ. I have a child and the child is dark-skinned. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, and the complaint was, I am not dark-skinned, my wife is not dark-skinned, but my child is dark-skinned. So it's like he was trying to indicate perhaps his wife did zina. So he said, O Messenger of Allah, I have a problem. What's the problem? My child is dark-skinned. I'm suspecting zina from my wife. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, هَلْ لَكَ مِنْ إِبِلٍ. Do you have camels? He said, yes. The Prophet said, مَا أَلْوَانُهَا. What are its colors? Then he said, حُمُرْ. I have red camels. Then the Prophet said, هَلْ مِنْهَا مِنْ أَوْرَقٍ. Is there any dark camels? Then he said, yes. So the Prophet said, فَأَنَّ ذَلِكَ. Where did that dark one come from? If all of your camels are red, there's one dark, where did it come from? So the man said, لَعَلَّهُ نَزَعُ عِرْقٍ. Perhaps one of the ancestors of this camel was dark-skinned. So the Prophet said the same thing regarding the man, فَلَعَلَّ إِبْنَكَ هَذَا نَزَعُ عِرْقٍ. Perhaps your son, in his ancestors was what? Somebody dark-skinned as well. So this is called what? Analogy. He compared it using a camel. So the Prophet ﷺ used qiyas. Number three is from the actions of the Sahaba. And we have a letter written by the Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. He wrote a letter to him when Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was a qadi, was a judge. And he said in it, ثُمَّ الْفَهْمَ الْفَهْمِ, then understanding, understanding. فِيمَا أُدِلَّ عَلَيْكَ مِمَّا وَرَدَ عَلَيْكَ مِمَّا لَيْسَ فِي قُرْآنٍ وَلَا سُنَّةٍ. In something that is presented to you, that is not in the Qur'an and the Sunnah, upon you is al-fahm, al-fahm, understanding, understanding. ثُمَّ قَايِسْ الْأُمُورِ, then qais, do qiyas. So do analogy with the matters. عندك وعرف الأمثال, and know the examples. ثم اعتمد فيما ترى إلى أحبها إلى الله, and see whatever is beloved to Allah. وأشبهها بالحق, and anything that is closer to the truth. So what did he say? وقايس الأمور, do analogy with the affairs. And some of the narrations mention, and this is where a lot of the scholars, they took their kitab al-ashbah wal-nadair, like as-Suyuti and others. Some of the Sahabas, like they say, Umar sent a letter to different companions, and they said, وَأَتْبِعَ الْأَشْبَاهَ وَالنَّظَائِرِ ثُمَّ قِسِ الْأُمُورَ بِذَلِكَ. Follow the things that are alike and bunch them out together, and things that are different, separate them. And then قِس بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ, and then do qiyas. So again, the Sahabas, they encouraged one another to do qiyas. And they said, use the word qis and qiyas, they use this word specifically. Also, Imam Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he narrates for Imam al-Muzani. Imam al-Muzani is which madhab? Shafi'i. He says, Imam al-Muzani says, Al-Fuqaha bin Asri Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the companions, or the fuqaha, the people and the jurists from the time of the Prophet, إلى يومنا هذا, until this day, وهلم جرى, and the likes of them, استعملوا المقاييس في الفقه, they used qiyas in fiqh. So from the time of the Prophet until now, until the time of Muzani and until now, everybody used qiyas. Qiyas was used all the time. And some of the scholars, they say this is actually an ijma', the qiyas is allowed. The fact that they all acted with qiyas. There's no one who's a faqih, who's a person of fiqh, who's not known to use qiyas. And they all used it, showing what? It's permissible, it's an evidence, it's a proof. Okay? So these are evidences to show qiyas is a hujjah for us in our religion. Now question, is there anyone who opposed us and said qiyas is not a hujjah? Ibn Hazmin, and this is the Zahiri madhab. So the Dawood al-Zahiri, first of all, and then Ibn Hazmin and all of the Zahiriyah, they oppose it. Why is their reasoning? Why did they oppose it? They said qiyas, it gives us evidence that is a dhanni. That is a dhanni. That is what? Speculative evidence. And therefore, it's not a hujjah for us. How are you going to take evidence that is speculative? And the response to it is what? The first issue is, qiyas is not dhanni. It's not just any dhann, it's ghalabatul dhann, it's high possibility. And in our religion, we do work with high possibilities. Example, is it not the case khabarul ahad benefits us what? High assumption, high possibility, and we still consider it. So are you going to reject khabarul ahad? They say no. Why are you rejecting qiyas? It's the same. So there is a response. And again, this khilaf of the Zahiriyah, the scholars, they say in this issue of what is a hujjah and what is not is غير معتبر. We don't consider it. We don't consider the khilaf of the Zahiriyah as a proof, because they are the only group that went alone. The four madahib, all of them agree, qiyas is a hujjah. And that's why we said these four evidences, Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' and Qiyas, they're called what? Mujma'un alayh, agreed upon. Why? All of the four madahib agree upon them. None of them ever said Qiyas is not a hujjah. Yeah. Again, to say it's ijma' sukuti needs a proof. Again, the Sahabas didn't have the issue of qiyas like that. The Prophet was there. And then after the Prophet, yes, they needed a bit of qiyas perhaps in tabi'een. To say it is a ijma', we require somebody to transmit the ijma' for us. So there's a difference between ijma' and mujma'un alayh. Ijma' means it's consensus, it's ijma'. And like we mentioned in the chapter of ijma', it requires shurut, conditions. If I say mujma'un alayya, and the Imam Muzani says what? It's mujma'un. He says وأجمع على أن النظير الحق حق وأن النظير الباطل باطل. أجمع. Even if Imam al-Buzani says أجمع, it means they all agreed upon it. It's strong, but it's not an ijma' unless there is a criteria that is satisfied. So this is qiyas's adillah. The next issue is the definition of qiyas, lughatan and istilahan. In the Arabic language, qiyas is used for two definitions. Number one is at-taqdir, estimation. Qiyas is used to mean estimation, at-taqdir. They would say, the Arabs would say, قِسْتُ الذِّرَاعَ بِالثَّوْبِ. I did qiyas of the dhira', my arm, with the thawb, meaning I estimated it, estimation. The second definition in the Arabic language is al-musawa, is equating something, equaling something to something else, equating. They say in the Arabic language, وَفُلَانٌ لَا يُقَاسُ بِفُلَانٍ. Such and such person, لَا يُقَاسُ, meaning he's unlike the other one, he's not equal. So qiyas means equal, making something equal. That's in the Arabic language. In the Sharia, what does it mean? The Shaykh Abi Ma'ali al-Juwayni, Imam al-Haramain, he defined it for us. He said, فَهُوَ رَدُّ الْفَرْعِ إِلَى الْأَصْلِ فِي الْحُكْمِ بِعِلَّةٍ تَجْمَعُهُمَا. And this is a good definition. And most of the usuliyin, when they define qiyas, they define it and they try their best to include the arkan of qiyas in it, the pillars of qiyas. So the pillars of qiyas are four: asl, far', illa, and hukum. If you look at the definition, do you find these four words in it or not? You do. Far', asl, hukum, and illa. So this is a definition that encompasses the four pillars of qiyas. Let's try to understand it. فَهُوَ رَدُّ الْفَرْعِ. It is to take a far'. And some scholars say ilhaq instead of rad. Instead of returning, they say is to take. Is ilhaqu aw raddu al-far'i ila al-asl. To take a far' back to an asl. Now what is asl and what is far'? An asl is a ruling that is established in the Sharia. A ruling that is established in the Sharia is called a asl. The far' is a new issue where we don't have a ruling for. It's a new issue where we don't have a ruling for. The hukum is the ruling. Halal, haram, mubah, sunnah, that's the hukum. Illa is the reasoning behind why the asl was given that hukum. So, let's try to understand. You have the asl. Example, if I say khamr is haram, that is the asl. Khamr is haram and we have evidences from it in the Quran and the Sunnah. That's the asl. Then what's the hukum here? At-tahrim, haram, good. Then what is the far'? Is the new issue I want to compare it to. Let's say I have a new drink and it also intoxicates. This new drink called drink X, which is there a drink called X? Okay. So there's a drink called drink X. New drink came out in the market. I want to know a ruling for it. This ruling was not given in the Quran and the Sunnah. There's no ayah in the Quran, حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ شُرْبَتْ or شَرْبَتْ X. There's no ayah like that or no hadith like that. So what do I have to do? To give this a ruling, I use qiyas. This new issue at hand is called a far'. The new issue where the Sharia has not explicitly spoken about is called a far'. And the illah is the reasoning behind why the original ruling was haram. Why was khamr haram? Is it because of the color? Is it because of the smell? Because of the taste? Why was it haram? Why is alcohol haram? Yes, because Allah told us. What's the reasoning behind it? Intoxicates. Al-iskar, it intoxicates. If I find intoxication in this new drink, I take the hukum of the original, of the asl, I transfer it to the hukum of the far'. The far' gets given the same hukum, which is what? Haram in this case. This is the process of qiyas. Does it make sense? So is ilhaq, taking far', the ruling of the far' back to the asl, or the other way, or ilhaq al-asl bil-far', or the other way. So you either take the ruling of the asl, bring it to the far', or you pull the ruling of the asl and bring it back to the fara. And why? Based on a illah, based on a reasoning that is common in both. There's a reasoning here which is iskab, there's a reasoning in the original which is iskab, and give them the same ruling.
Is it possible for the father to do the asl, because this is haram, or because it's halal, it's haram?
It's called qiyas al-aqs. So the opposite. So if the illah, in some cases, again it's not a strong type of qiyas, but it's called qiyas al-aqs. And some scholars say it's not a type. That's actually the mafhum al-mukhalafa al-awlawi they call it. So it's either called a qiyas al-aqs or it's a mafhum al-mukhalaf, it's the opposite understanding. If this is halal, then the opposite understanding of, if this illah is not found, then it's haram, or the opposite. Makes sense? Okay. Again, some scholars call it qiyas al-aqs, and some scholars say it's not a category, it's just mafhum al-mukhalafa, awlawi, that is foremost. And we'll come to the types of qiyas, inshallah. And sometimes you can have a illah that is found or missing, but it doesn't take the same ruling because there's more than one illah in the mas'ala. And we'll come to it inshallah ta'ala. So this is the definition of qiyas. What is it? Without looking, who can tell me the definition? Abdul Wali. So you're thinking now. الحاق أصل بفرع بعلة جامعة بينهما, because of a ruling that is common in between them. Jamil. So this is the definition of al-qiyas. Let's take some examples of qiyas so it makes a bit more sense.
Is qiyas restricted to حكم الحاج?
Yes.
So how can you go to the mention
Sorry?
The author didn't mention that here, they mentioned it now.
Which is?
It's restricted to حكم الحاج.
A new ruling. Yeah, that's what the by definition fara' means. A fara' means a new issue. And we'll come to see the definition of each of these pillars. But by definition, fara' is a new matter, a new issue. And if you have a ruling that is not a new ruling, it's in the sharia, you don't need a qiyas. Yeah, you go to the Quran and the Sunnah and you have the ruling for it. Okay? And also, so that's why this issue of the scholars calling nabid. Nabid is the drink made from putting dates in water and leaving it for a long period of time. And the Prophet used to do it because the water in Mecca was salty. The Prophet would take dates, leave it in water for 3 days, and then drink the water because it becomes sweet. Certain people, what they would do is leave it there for a long time until it ferments, it becomes alcoholic. And that was called nabid al-tamr, nabid. So certain scholars, they say nabid is haram because of qiyas. Because of qiyas, with khamr. But the correct issue is, we don't need to say it's through qiyas. Because you have kullu muskirin haram. The hadith where the Prophet said, every intoxicant is haram. It's direct evidence. So when you have a direct ruling for a matter, you don't need qiyas. You don't need qiyas. So that's why we need qiyas when there is new issues. We don't have a ruling for directly in the sharia. So, examples of qiyas. We mentioned one example of qiyas, which is al-khamr and a new drink. Let's take some more examples, inshallah ta'ala. Another example of qiyas is, the scholars, they say the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam naha anil bawli fil ma'i rakib. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited from urinating in standing or still water. That's the hadith. The Prophet prohibited from urinating in standing or still water. Now this is a asal. Why? Because we have the hadith regarding it directly. This is the original ruling. Now the scholars differ regarding the ruling of urinating in standing water. What is the ruling of it? Haram or makruh? The scholars have a difference of opinion. A large group of people, they say, and the fuqaha, they say it is makruh, dislike. Let's take that for now. Let's say it's makruh. What's the ruling of then defecating, akramakumullah, in standing water? Urine the Prophet mentioned. The Prophet never mentioned defecating, meaning number one, number two. Number two. Makruh as well. Good. Why? Qiyas. Qiyas. The asal here is what? The urination. What's the hukum? makruh, disliked. What's the fara'? Number two. Number two? Number two. What's the illa? And this is where everybody's quiet, because this is where you need to think. So it's the issue of tanjis, the water becoming impure. If urine falls on it, it will become impure. If feces falls into it, akramakumullah, it also becomes impure. So therefore, let's say there's a new fara' now. What's the ruling of spilling waste from a factory into standing water? And it makes it impure. Also what? Also makruh or haram? Not haram. So we say to the brothers who have factories, no problem. It's only dislike, bismillah. Huh? But we say it's haram.
Even if the ill is found, is there also additional harms which will...
Ahsant. Again, this is why I said 1 plus 1 is not always 2 in usul al-fiqh. There is other factors you have to take into consideration, which is if the water or this chemical that comes out of the factory is harmful, then it goes back to other principles like la darara wa la darara. There's no harm, there's no causing of harm, and other reasons why it becomes haram. But the asal is what? By minimum we can say is makruh at minimum. Okay?
1 plus 1 is 2.
Sorry?
1 plus 1 is 2.
Is 2, but not in usul al-fiqh. Because not in usul al-fiqh, not in the science, unless because there is other factors that change. So 1 plus 1 is 2, inshallah. But in usul al-fiqh, the point is, nothing is as straightforward as it is in usul al-fiqh. There's always other factors you need to look into. But yes, so it was just an example. But yes, 1 plus 1 is 2 in real life and in usul al-fiqh. But the point is, things don't always appear as they are in usul al-fiqh. There's always factors behind things. So you have to look at things with a microscope always. So that is another example. Another example of qiyas is the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited he allowed riba to go into a number of issues, like in the hadith al-bur, al-sha'ir, al-tamr, al-milh, al-fidda, wal-dhahab. These 6 things have riba, the Prophet ﷺ said. Why? The scholars then discuss why. A group of scholars, they say because they are mat'um, they are food. A group of scholars say no, is because they are commodity. A group of scholars say no, al-kayl. They are all things that are weighed. And therefore anything that is weighed will take the ruling of riba goes into it. So from this they say we have a new issue, which is rice. Can exchanging 1 kilogram of rice with another kilogram of rice, different quality, affect it? When it's not right away, when it's delayed and things like that, they say yes, riba also works in rice. Riba can happen in rice as well. Why? Because of the same issue. What's the illah? They discuss khilaf. The fuqaha of the Shafi'iyya, they say it is ta'am, it is food. And then they have a way to escape gold and silver that is mentioned. The strongest opinion it is kayl, they're all weighed. You can weigh gold, you can weigh silver, you can weigh wheat, barley, and salt, all of those, and dates, you can weigh all of them. So you can do qiyas that way. Another example is the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقضي القاضي حين يقضي وهو غضبان. A judge should not make a judgment in the state of anger. What's the hukum? Hukum haram, it's haram. It's haram for the judge to pass a ruling when he is in a state of anger. What's the asal? In the state of anger. What's the illah? Mixed emotions. Close. Injustice. No. Sorry? Good. Even that's not specific. Something specific I'm looking for. You're the closest now. Good. Tashwish al-fikr. So it's not the outcome, is what? Tashwish al-fikr. That your judgment is not there. The lack of judgment, or it's affecting your judgment. So the scholars, they take from this is their illah. So it's not because he's angry. It's the fact that his judgment is going to be impaired when he's angry. So any other situation where a judge has impaired judgment, we say to him, the hukum is what? Haram. This is qiyas. So we say to a judge, لا يقضي القاضي حين يقضي وهو جوعان. A judge should not make a judgment in the state of extreme hunger, or extreme anger, or extreme laziness, or extreme happiness, or extreme sorrow. All of that is what? Situations where his judgment is impaired. As a result, we say what? You should not make a judgment, it's haram for you. What is this called? Qiyas. Qiyas. Another example of qiyas is the ayah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَى ظُلْمًا إِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ نَارًا. Those who eat the wealth of an orphan, they will eat in their stomachs the hellfire. This is an asl. What is the asl? It is eating the wealth of an orphan is, what's the hukum? Tahrim, haram. What's the illah behind it? Huh? Oppression. Be specific. Think about that. Say the second thing? Good. It is wasting or taking the rights of the orphan. That's the illah. So from this, and by the way, as a benefit, لا يأكلون, the reason why Allah says يأكلون, it does not mean because they eat from it, meaning they take the wealth and eat the wealth and the money. No. It's they benefit from it by means of eating. That's the main source of benefit. If you want to take wealth, the main way you benefit from it is what? Spend it and eat food. But if a person now takes the money and invests it, the money of an orphan, invests it for his own purpose, is that allowed? No, that also falls under ya'kuluna. We have a new fara' now, which is, what if I take the money of an orphan, I don't invest it for myself, I don't benefit from myself, I don't eat from it, but rather I just burn it. Put it, set on fire. What's the hukum? Haram. Why? Good. You're taking the right of the orphan. Same illah was found. So regardless of how you get rid of or how you don't give back the right of the orphan, it's haram. So we don't look at, it's again, as long as the illah is found, what's the hukum? At-tahrim. Okay? Another example is the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned the hadith of Aisha in Abi Dawud, فَإِنِّي لَا أُحِلُّ الْمَسْجِدَ لِحَائِضٍ وَلَا جُنُوبٍ. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, I say it's haram for a woman who is in the state of menses and janaba to come to the masjid. Okay? The woman who's in the state of hayd and a man and the woman in the state of janaba. A woman in the state of hayd is not allowed to be in the masjid. This is the asl. What is the illah behind it? What is the illah behind it? Ahsan. So this is the illah. The illah is, the scholars they say khashyatu talwith, is the woman is in her menses, she's going to bleed, sometimes bleed a lot. They'll make the carpet in the masjid and everything dirty. She's not allowed to. So we have a fara. Let's say somebody was shot and is bleeding a lot in the hand. And brother, is he allowed to be in the masjid? No. Same thing as the woman who's in the state of janaba. Or a brother who is wearing shoes, and on his shoes is wet impurity, like the urine of an animal that is haram. It's wet. And if he walks in the masjid and he wants to pray with his shoes on in the masjid today, is he allowed to walk in with his shoes on? No. Why? Khashyat talwith. It's also fearing the rest of the masjid becoming impure as well and contaminated. Anything where the same hukum or the same illah is found is given the same hukum. The issue of the man who got shot, the issue of the man who had impurities on his shoes and he doesn't want to take off his shoes and it's wet, so it's going to contaminate. It's all called what? Huh? Fara. It's the fara. What's the asl? The woman in her menses, she's the asl. What's the illah? Khashyat al-talwith, the impurity being contaminated. What's the hukum? Haram. Haram for her to enter. Jameel, make sense? Okay. Someone had a question? Now, تفضل. الجنب أحسنت. Some of the scholars say it's ta'abbudi, there is no illah. So here you have to understand, certain issues the scholars they say there is no illah, they call it ta'abbudi. That's it, the Prophet said junub, so it's sometimes restricted to just that. In the case of janaba, Allahu a'lam, what seems to be the case is ta'abbudi. And therefore you don't do qiyas on the junub. You don't say junub and then you say anything else like janaba takes the ruling because that's specific. Allah a'lam. We'll understand, does everything have a illah? No, some cases there's no illah, that's how it is and Allah told us. Yeah.
A man who's when she's sleeping,
Yeah. So there's other hadith to say that the man shouldn't remain in the state of janaba in the masjid. That's a different issue. That's a different issue. Okay, everybody understand what qiyas is now? Yes? Analogy. You have an asl, you have a fara', you have a hukm, you have a illah, you're doing analogy. Now, so this is qiyas. The next issue is what? Arkanul qiyas, the different pillars of qiyas which we went through. The first one is what? Fara'. Fara' is what? The new ruling. It's also called al-maskuti anhu, the one that is silent about, where Allah has not given you a ruling. It's also called al-muradu ilhaquhu, the one that you desire to take the ruling to. So that you take the hukum to it. Al-muradu ilhaquhu. It's the one that you want to take the hukum back to. Number two is the asl. That's the second pillar of the qiyas, which is what? The original ruling established in the sharia. It is also called al-mansusi alayh, the one that there is a nas for. There is a nas for it. Number three is al-hukum. Al-hukum is what? It's the ruling of the asl. And the scholars they say, هو الأمر المقصود إلحاق الفرع بالأصل. It's the thing that you're transferring from the asl to the fara'. That's the hukum. It's the thing that you transfer from the asl to the fara' is the hukum. Is that a good definition according to the usuliyin? No, it's not a good definition. Number four, al-illah, the reasoning behind the ruling. And it's also called al-wasf al-mawjud fihima. Is the condition or the situation that's found in both the asl and the fara'. Which is why you're transferring the ruling from the asl to the fara'. And some say al-ma'na al-mushtarak baynahuma, is the common meaning in both of them. Meaning, it's the commonality between the asl and the fara', which you find in both. As a result, you transfer the hukum of the asl to the hukum of the fara'. Okay? And this is the four pillars of qiyas now. Yes, there is a difference, big difference. Illah is sometimes the illah is not the hikmah, and the hikmah is not the illah. The difference. So, for example, hikmah is more of what the mujtahid believes it to be. He doesn't say this is the reasoning behind why the hukum is attached. It's possible reason why Allah told us. And the hikmah is always there when there is no illah. When the scholars they're unable to come with their illah, they say this is the hikmah. For example, why is Maghrib Salah 3 rak'ah? Is there a illah? Is there a reasoning why Maghrib is 3? No, it's ta'abbudi. Then they say, okay, next step, let's think about the hikmah behind it. Then they start to discuss it. Why can a Muslim man marry 4 women and not the other way around? Ta'abbudi. Allah told us and we listen and we obey. Is there a illah? No, there is no illah. Okay, what's the hikmah behind it? Then they start to delve into the hikmah. Make sense? So it's a step further. So sometimes they may be the same, they may be common, but generally it's different. It's when the absence of a illah is where you find a hikmah. And hikmah is more of an iqtibas. They don't say for certain. They say it may be this, maybe this, and maybe this, and maybe this. Whereas a illah, there's a process that you follow in order to determine an illah.
So wouldn't ta'abbudi be the hikmah?
Yes, when this is ta'abbudi, there should be a hikmah behind it. And again, issue of hikmah, sometimes you may not know a hikmah. You're not required to know the hikmah. But scholars do it just as an extra bonus step. You don't need to know the hikmah for everything. Why is Maghrib 3 and why is Fajr 2? You don't need to know it. You don't need to know. And this issue of chasing the hikmah of everything that Allah legislated is not befitting. It's not befitting, and you open a door of evil to yourself. No, it's not like that. So this is the next topic. What's the next one? The types of qiyas. Arkan we went through. Arkan, there's al-asl, the original ruling, al-far', which is the new ruling, al-hikmah, al-hukm, the ruling itself, and number 4, al-illah, the reasoning. These are the 4 pillars of qiyas. Then the Shaykh, he speaks about the next topic, which is a very, very important topic, which is the types of qiyas. And the Shaykh, he defined and broke down qiyas into 3 types. The first one he called it qiyasu illah, the qiyas of using a illah. Number 2, qiyas ad-dalala, the qiyas of dalala, using a indicative evidence, but not a illah. Number 3, qiyas al-shabah, the analogy of resemblance. And there are differences between each. The strongest of them is qiyas al-illah. The qiyas al-illah is the strongest type of qiyas. Then comes qiyas al-dalala, and then comes qiyas al-shabah. Is there another type of qiyas? Some of the scholars, they say yes. Like the brother we discussed earlier, qiyas al-aks, they say qiyas of the opposite. Some scholars say it's not a qiyas. Some of the scholars, they add another category called qiyas nafyul fariq, the qiyas of the absence of a difference. So they're not looking for something common between the asl and the fara', but they're trying to look for what? Lack of difference. We'll come to it inshallah very briefly, and some scholars say that's not even a category. These 3 types of qiyas is dividing qiyas based on how strongly the illah is found in the asl. How strongly and clearly the illah is found in the asl. Qiyas al-illah is, the illah is very clear. Qiyas al-dalala, the illah is weaker. And you can differ with me regarding the illah. I can say, okay, this is the illah, you can say, no, akhi, you're wrong. Then we can say, okay, let's do qiyas al-dalala. We can't do qiyas al-illah now. Qiyas al-shabah, we're not even looking for an illah. We're doing analogy based on no illah. What are we looking for then? Just resemblance. Just resemblance. Okay, these are the 3 types of qiyas, and we'll take each one and we'll take examples of it, inshaAllah ta'ala. The Shaykh, he says, قياس العلة ما كانت العلة فيه موجبة للحكم. What in it the illah is موجبة للحكم. It's necessitated from the hukum. So from the ruling, the illah necessitates the ruling. Meaning the link between the asl and the hukum, that illah is very clear in front of us. There is no going back and forth. It's very, very clear. And again, there is a longer definition, but we'll stick to what the Shaykh he mentioned, inshaAllah ta'ala. Let's take an example of qiyas al-illah. Everything we mentioned before was qiyas al-illah. Another example of it is when Allah says in the Quran, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Allah says to the parents, do not say uff. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. That is a asl. What's the hukum of it? Haram. It's haram to say uff to your parents. What's the fara'? Let's say we have a new issue. Is it allowed to hit your parents? وَالْعِيَاذِ بِاللَّهِ. Is it allowed to curse your parents? No. Why? What's the illah? Why were you not allowed to say uff to your parents? What's the reasoning? Disrespect. Are you sure? Somebody can... Are you then allowed to joke with your parents and then offend them? But it's not disrespect, it's offending them. Huh?
It's gratitude.
Gratitude. So Allah told us, don't say uff. What's the reasoning behind it? Yeah, but why? That's the illah. That's why. Yeah, it's obedience, but what's the reasoning behind this obedience? The rights. Not close, very close. Say again? They allow you to grow up with them. There's a reasoning why this hukum is. You're right, this is from what should allow you not to say off. But there's a reasoning why you're not allowed to say off to them.
They know better.
Huh?
They know better.
They know better, no. To honor them, no. The 30 verse, no. You're giving me, like, you're all right, that's all true. But there's a reason why the hukum was given, the asl was given this hukum. Why? Good say. Very, very close. Very close. It's al-idal, harming them. Uff, well, why is not allowed to say uff? If I say, if I'm a parent and my son says uff to me, it's going to harm me. That's the reasoning why you're not allowed to say uff, because it's what? Al-idal, it's harming. It's going to harm the parents. Okay? As a result, anything else that harms, like a darb, hitting will harm, haram. Cursing will harm, haram. Make sense? So, answer.
In response to that, if you joke with your parents in a bad way, it may not harm you.
It's allowed.
So even if you use certain types of language to your parents.
Yeah, if they're allowed, if it's normal, yeah, again, from muru'ah, from mannerisms, you shouldn't. From respect. But to say it's haram requires an evidence, at least by qiyas. Okay? So this is qiyas al-illa. Another example of it is we took khamar and the new drink, that's also qiyas al-illa. That's the first example. The second type of qiyas is called qiyas al-dalala. He says, ما كانت العلة دالة على الحكم. Where the illa is دالة على الحكم. It shows the hukum. So you don't have a illa, or the illa is differed upon. The illa is differed upon. And an example of this is, I'll give you an example closer to the asl, the original one that we mentioned, which is khamr was haram. Why? Iskar. It intoxicates you. I have a new drink. It intoxicates me. What's the hukum of this new drink? Haram. This is illah. Let's say I have a new drink. It does not intoxicate me, but it has alcohol in it, a percentage of alcohol. It's not intoxicating. Is it halal or haram? According to the scholars who only take qiyas al-illah, they will say this is halal. There's no illah, there's no intoxication, therefore it is halal, and the asl of everything is halal. But according to the scholars who actually believe in qiyas al-dalala, they will say the presence of alcohol indicates a possibility of intoxication, even though we've affirmed and confirmed there is no intoxication. So this is called qiyasu ad-dalala. This presence of alcohol is indicative, it indicates a possibility of iskar, of the illah. So the link between the asl and the hukum is not a very clear illah, it's a weak illah, it's a differed upon illah. Does it make sense? Which is, in this case, the presence of alcohol. Okay, that's one example. We'll come to more examples, and if you have a question, we'll come to it inshallah. Another example is zakah is wajib in the wealth of a person who's baligh, who's reached the age of puberty. There is no difference of opinion. It's proven in the Quran and the Sunnah, and ijma' even. Is zakah applicable to the wealth of a child? Let's say there's a child who's not reached the age of puberty. He's inherited £1 million from his father. Is zakah applicable to him?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyone differ with the brother? Who differs? Raise your hand. No. There's no brother. Why do you say he's allowed, or he has to give zakah?
He has to give zakah.
Yeah. You said he has to, right? The child.
Actually, no.
No, change your opinion, okay. Who here says the child who has wealth that is beyond the minimum threshold has to give zakat? Raise your hands. If you believe a child has to give zakat. Who believes a child does not have to give zakat? Good. So this is an issue of qiyasu al-dalala. How and what is the difference coming about? They say, a person who's a sabi, a child, or let's go back to the asl. The asl is what? A person who's baligh and aqil, a person who's reached the age of bulugh, puberty, zakat is wajib for him. Why? What's the illah? A group of scholars say the illah behind it is two things: al-nisab and al-hawl. The fact that he's reached the minimum threshold and the money has been with him for 1 year. That's the illah, and is attached to the money, not to the person. A group of scholars say, no, that's not the illah. You guys don't know what you're talking about. The illah is the fact that the person is mukallaf, is attached to the person himself. The person that himself has to come with acts of obedience. As a result, zakat is wajib on him. It's nothing to do with wealth. It's related to the person themselves. So a group say this is the illah, another group says no, that's the illah. Based on that, there was the difference of opinion. Based on that, there is the difference of opinion. As a result, the issue of a person who's young or a person who's majnoon, a person is mentally insane but has wealth, does he have to take out zakat? If we say the zakat and the hik or the illah is what? Is attached to the money, which is nisab and hawl, we say he has to. But if you say no, he's not mukallaf, so then, and he doesn't have to come with an ibadah in the first place, therefore no zakat for him. This is a weaker form of link between the asl and the hukm. The illah is weak here, it's not as strong. It's not as strong. And that's why he says, كانت دالة ليس موجبة. It's not 100% this illah. It's dalan, it's indicative, it shows, it's likely. Okay? So any illah which is differed upon, then what kind of qiyas will you use? Dalala. You cannot use qiyas al-illah because the qiyas is differed upon. Does it make sense? Okay. The last type of qiyas is called qiyas al-shabah, qiyas of resemblance. We're not even using a illah. Not a strong illah, not a weak illah. There's no illah in the first place. There's no reasoning. It's called shabah, resemblance. You have a asl, you have a fara', and it's going between two asl. So you have a new issue, and you're trying to say, does it resemble the first asl or a second asl? The first original ruling or the second original ruling? You are confused. And you find commonalities between them based on which you'll say, okay, it's the first one or the second one. I'll give you an example, inshallah, it'll become more clear. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Example of that is a slave, al-abd. If somebody has a slave, let's say for example, I have a slave, his name is Zayd. Somebody kills my slave, murders him, intentionally, not accidentally. Does this person now have to pay blood money or the price of a slave? What do I mean by price? It means not blood money, it means the value of the slave, because slaves are what? Things that you own at the end of the day, right? Safa? Price, because he is a slave. This is a difference of opinion. What do you say? Both. So you have to, what's the hukm at the end? Al-diya, or do you say al-qima? You can't, it have to be one. You either pay, this is taking too much from the person who killed him. You're either only going to take blood money, 100 camels from him, or you're going to say, no, give me the price, the value of my slave. For example, I have a phone, you break my phone. In the Sharia, you have to pay me the value of my phone, 500 pounds. Or, do we deal with him as his blood money? Give me 1,100 camels. You can't say both, it's one of the two. It's like saying, you can't do something like that.
They view the slave as similar.
Ahsan, so the whole issue goes back to, is a slave more resembling the issue of a behemoth, an animal, behemothul an'am, a cattle, from who you possess? Or is a slave more likely and more closer to a free person, a hur? So the fara' is what? Abd. What's the two asal that he's mutaraddidun baynahuma? Behemoth is either a property, like an animal, or he's like a free man. Those who say he's like a property or like an animal, they say from many angles. Number one, you can buy a slave and you can sell a slave. Just like you can buy a sheep. Again, when I say he's similar, of course, physically, the slave doesn't look like an animal. We're saying he's similar in the hukum of it, the ruling of it. So, the slave is a human being at the end of the day, but it's from the hukum, the ruling of it. A slave you can buy and sell, an animal you can buy and sell. A slave you can gift, hiba. I can gift you a slave, just like I can gift you a sheep. So, I can also do waqf of a slave. Say waqf for the sake of Allah, I can do that as well. Just like I can do it for an animal. The other angles of how they resemble a free person is, a slave is going to be punished if he does a crime. Just like a free man is going to be punished if he does a crime. So if a slave steals, is he going to be punished? Of course, yes. A free man, if he's going to steal something, is going to be punished. Yes, he resembles a free man more. Another way he resembles a free person is a slave marries. An animal doesn't marry. And if an animal steals something, a monkey steals, you have a pet monkey, it steals. Are you going to do had on him? Take him to court? No. So he resembles what? He resembles a slave in the fact that he marries, also in the fact that the obligations are wajib upon him. The slave has to pray salah, just like the free man prays salah, but an animal doesn't pray the salah. Okay, like salah, like we pray, he's not mukallaf to pray. So the scholars, if you say he resembles more the behemoth, the animal, then what's the hukum? If you kill my slave, what do you have to give me? The price of my slave. I say my slave, I bought him for £1,000, you have to pay me £1,000. It's like property. You've damaged my property, you're liable to give me a return. But if I say no, he's closer to a hur, and if you kill my slave, what do I get? A diya, 100 camels. Does it make sense? Now, so that's a qiyas al-shabah. Another example of qiyas al-shabah is the issue of background nasheed. Background nasheed is a halal or haram, or the nasheed in the background sounds that are generated from human voice, but they resemble music. Is it halal or haram? This is a fara'. It either belongs to one of two asl. Either you say it belongs to human voices, which is mubah, or it belongs to ma'azif, musical instrument, which is haram. Let's now analyze from your perspective. Again, we're not giving a ruling, I'm just saying, let's analyze, let's use our brains. Music or these background nasheed, everybody knows what I'm talking about, right? The background nasheed, right? In the background of certain lectures, they put it and stuff like that. Is it musical instruments or is it resembling more the human voice? Let's analyze. How does it resemble the human voice? From the place where the sound is produced. The human voice is produced from the human. These instruments or these sounds that resemble instruments are produced from the human. What else? You have 1 point for the mubah. They come from? So how does it resemble the music instruments more? The sound, so the melody. What else? It also sways you, right? The feeling that you get is the same feeling that you get from when you listen to a musical instrument. So 2 points for tahrim, right? 1 point for mubah. Does it make sense? Then you say which one it resembles more, it takes the ruling of it. That's the point. Again, I'm not giving you a hukum, but I'm just trying to give you an understanding. Another example of this is al-mughma alayhi, the person who faints, goes unconscious in Ramadan. Does he have to bring back his fasting? Yes or no? No. We'll come to it. So he is either compared to, number one, an insane person, or he's compared to a person who's sleeping. If we say he's like a person who's sleeping, what's the hukum? His fasting is valid, he doesn't need to bring back anything. But if we say he is majnoon, then his fasting was not accepted, because an insane person's fasting is not accepted. So, a person who's unconscious, is he more like a sleeping person, or is he more like an insane person? Yes. Sleeping. Or is he in the middle? He's like both. Give him both hukum. It's right. We would give him a middle hukum actually. The scholars, they say, depends on the amount he fainted for. If he fainted throughout the morning time of Ramadan, then he is like a majnoon. Didn't have intellect for the whole of it. But if he fainted for a portion of time and then he woke up, then what do we say? He's like a sleeping person. Does that make sense? So he's mutaraddid. The point is, again, to show you, even in this case, we don't just say he's this side or this side. He's on the fence maybe sometimes. Okay? So this is a qiyas of shabah. This is how you do it. Is what you have one fara, is mutaraddid, is between two asl. Whichever asl it leans to, it takes the ruling of it. What question?
One of the examples about the music, why can't we go to the Qiyas al-Illah? What would be the idea of tahleel of music?
There's a discussion. Itan was the
I don't know, but I was saying, if we say, so let's say, do something like that, for example, it's the swaying of emotions. So if we say that's the case, then couldn't that also be applied?
Yeah, you should take that as a illah. But if you say there is no illah, it's ta'abbudi. The Prophet ﷺ said it, and Allah said it. Lahu al-hadith, Ibn Abbas statement, khalas, ta'abbudi. Ibn Abbas didn't say anything regarding the illah. There's no thing in the statement of Ibn Abbas to say this is the reasoning behind it. It's ta'abbudi, music is music, khalas.
So then, for us to say something as an illah, does there have to be a clear evidence?
Yes. So there's a whole there's a whole chapter in Usul al-Fiqh, in a subsection of qiyas called Masalik al-Illah. How do you determine the illah? You can't just take the illah and say, I think that's the illah. No, there's a whole process. There's masalik, the different ways of trying to identify this is the illah. And that's where tafawut al-uqul, one person is smarter than the other. That's what happens.
So the differences between the scholars and what the illah is here and the illah is here is because of the law that they take different opinions than the law that taking the illah.
They may not differ in the dawabit or the masalik, it's just ijtihad at the end of the day. It's a matter of ijtihad. One of the ulama may say, I think this is the illah. Another alim may say, I don't think that's the illah. It's a matter of ijtihad at the end of the day. And it may also, sometimes it goes back to the different methods to extract the illah. We mentioned in the beginning, the Ahnaf have a unique way of looking at usul al-fiqh. Their usul are different than the usul of the three other madahib. So that also plays a role in it as well. And sometimes also depends on the dalil that's in front of you. So the dalil where you're extracting the illah from, a group of scholars may not have the evidence in front of them. You have, and therefore you have an illah, and they don't. Make sense? So there's a number of factors why they would come up with a difference of illah. Yeah, so qiyas al-illah, in fact, the most common type of qiyas is qiyas al-dalala. In the books of the fuqaha is qiyas al-dalala. Qiyas al-illah is very hard. It's not impossible, it is a lot, but it's the most common is qiyas al-dalala, because the illah is very likely to be differed upon in most cases. So these are the three types of qiyas. We'll come to it. So there is two types of illah. There's a illah that is mansoos and there's a illah that is mustanbata. Sometimes the illah is clear. It's in the nas. It's 100% is black and white. You can't see any other way. Sometimes the illah you have to do ijtihad and extract it. So the illah is of two types. And therefore, breaking down qiyas is also of two types. They therefore break down qiyas into qiyasun jali wa khafi. A qiyas that is apparent when the illah is mansoos. For example, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned when the Prophet says, نهيتكم أو نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن ادخار لحوم الأضاحي. The Prophet prohibited the storing of the meat of udhiyah more than 3 days. And then the Prophet allowed it. And the Prophet said what? Min ajli dafa, based on the group of people that entered Medina, I prohibited you from keeping the meat and storing it for 3 days. Min ajli, this is mansus. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ كَيْ, because of this is clear illah, it's explicitly mentioned. This type of qiyas is called qiyas jali, clear cut qiyas. The qiyas that is khafi is when you don't know what's the illah, like the issue of the riba in these 6 categories. What's the illah? A group of scholars say it's because these can be stored. A group of them say because it's commodity. A group of them say because it can be weighed. It's khilaf. There the illah is mustanbata, you have to extract it. There is room for ijtihad. Makes sense?
All the take these types of qiyas, or are there some types of qiyas that will something like that?
It's a good question. They generally take the concept of qiyas. Do they reject certain types of qiyas? Allahu a'lam, I don't know. But there may be certain type of qiyas they are less likely to use because of their usul. Because of their usul. They generally take the type of qiyas, but it may be also, it's hard to determine as a madhab as a whole. You may find a group of people in that madhab that are less likely to use that. But do we attribute that to the whole madhab? Allahu a'lam. Allahu a'lam, I don't know. It's a good question. Now, clear? Types of qiyas. How much time do we have? Alhamdulillah, we have a lot of time, huh? Okay.
What time?
Allahu a'lam, we generally stop when? Just before Maghrib, yeah. Maybe another half an hour, 20 minutes, inshallah. We just finished this chapter of qiyas and the conditions of qiyas, and we'll stop, inshallah. So, these are the 3 types of qiyas. And then he says, one of the last points he mentions, وَلَا يُصَارُ إِلَيْهِ مَعَ إِمْكَانِ مَا قَبْلَهُ. You do not do qiyas al-shabah if you can do the first 2 types of qiyas. You cannot go to qiyas al-shabah if you can do qiyas al-'illa or qiyas al-dalala. You always start with the strongest type of qiyas first. Now, tafadhal.
أحسن الله إليك. ومن شرط الفرع أن يكون مناسبا للأصل، ومن شرط الأصل أن يكون ثابتا بدليل متفقا عليه بين الخصمين، ومن شرط العلة أن تضطرد في معلولاتها فلا تنتقض لا لفظا ولا معنى، ومن شرط الحكم أن يكون مثل العلة في النفي والإثبات، والعلة هي الجالبة للحكم، والحكم هو المجلوب للعلة.
Now, so the author now mentions a list of things relating to conditions of the qiyas. The pillars of qiyas that we took are 4. Asal, fara', hukum and illah. The Shaykh will start to mention conditions of some of these pillars. The shurut of some of these pillars. He starts with the shart of the fara', the new ruling, the condition for it. He says, أن يكون مناسبا للأصل. It is munasib. And this is what is called as munasaba. It's appropriate. It's appropriate. Meaning for you to say, this is the illah of the hukum and it's found in the fara', it needs to be appropriate. Example, why do we say khamr is haram? Khamr is haram. Why is alcohol haram? What's the reasoning behind it? Yes, Allah told us, but what's the illah behind it? Iskar, intoxication. It intoxicates you and therefore it is haram. Now what would be غير مناسب, not appropriate, would be to say it is the fact that khamr is cold, therefore it is haram. Or the khamr is red in color, therefore it is haram. That's not munasib. Does that make sense? So again, this is more of an extra detail that he's added to it, inshallah. And there's a few other details, but we'll stop there. Then he says, وَمِن شُرُوطِ الْأَصْلِ, from the condition of the asl. So he's taking another pillar of qiyas, which is al-asl, which is the original ruling. What's a condition of it? He says, أن يكون ثابتا بدليل متفق عليه بين الخصمين. It needs to be agreed upon evidence between both parties. And when he says khasmain, he means what? Khasmain, the two parties. Huh? Muslim kafir, Ahlul Sunnah, not Ahlul Sunnah, Shafi'i, Maliki, what does it mean? Huh? Mufti and which one? He means, this is in the case of a hiwar and a munadara, a debate. When you debate the masal of fiqh, the person in front of you is your khasm, is your opponent. And again, he uses the word khasm. Khasm means what? Enemy. It's not good for him to use this word. He should have used faqihani, the two fuqaha. Or he should have used al-mukhalif, the opponent. Al-khasm shows you this idea of he's your enemy. Again, when you're discussing masail of fiqh, even though unfortunately sometimes it seems like your enemy in front of you, but again, it's fiqh and discussions of fiqh are based on rahmah. You don't say he's my enemy and I hate him. It's more of an intellectual discussion. So when he says khasmaini, he means two people trying to discuss an issue of fiqh. The opposite person is what? He is your khasm or mukhalif. He's your mukhalif. So if I'm discussing an issue of fiqh with somebody, Maliki still, huh? Taha. Let's say Taha is Maliki and I am Shafi'i, let's say hypothetically, okay? We have an issue where we have a discussion, okay? I say, when you wipe over your leather socks, you only have to wipe a portion of your leather socks. Taha says, no, you have to wipe the whole of the top of the leather socks. And there's a difference of opinion. I say, no, the leather socks I have to wipe just a part of it. He says, no, you have to wipe the whole thing from the top. And I say, no. And I say, my evidence is qiyas on the fact when you wipe the head, you have to wipe a portion of the head. And that's the qawl of the Shafi'iyya. And they use the ayah, بِرُؤُسِكُمْ the ba here, they say the tab'id. It means a part of the head you need to touch. So according to the Shafi'iyya, what do you have to wipe in the wudu? A part of the head is enough. And they say a majority part of the head. Some say a third part. And ala kulli hal, a part of the head is enough for them. You don't have to do the whole head and every part of the head like that. What did the Malikiyya say? Jami'a ras, all of the head. But look, we're both discussing a issue, which is a new issue, which is what? Wiping over the socks. I am using an asal that he doesn't even agree with me in the same asal. I cannot use it with my mukhalif. I can't use it with him. We differ regarding the asal. I cannot use my qiyas when his asal, he doesn't even agree with my asal. That makes sense? Okay. Another example. The Maliki also say taharatu al-kalb, right? Dogs are khilaf, right? They say it is tahir, the dogs are tahir. The Shafi'iyya, they say dogs are what? And the Hanabil and the rest of the Madahib, what do they say? Najis. The dog is najis, najisul ayn. Yes, the Malikiyya, they say when the dog dies, he is najis, there's no doubt about it. That is meita. But whilst it's alive, they say it is tahir. Let's say, for example, that a Shafi'i is discussing it with a Maliki, and the Shafi'i says the khanzir, the pig, the swine is impure, qiyasan ala al-kalb. I'm doing qiyas on the dog. And then the Maliki says, no, I don't agree with your asl. I don't agree with the fact that the dog aslan is najis. So if there's a disagreement in the asl, you can't argue with another party. You have to first agree on the premise and the asl, which is we both accept that asl. Then if I bring you a qiyas, you have to accept it. Does that make sense? So that's what he's mentioning here, which is from the conditions of the asl, أن يكون ثابتا بدليل متفق عليه بين الخصمين. And again, it would have sufficed him to say أن يكون ثابتا بدليل متفق عليه. It would have been, if I come with an evidence that is agreed upon, it should be taken by both parties anyways. Again, this is just a side benefit. Then he comes with, and by the way, when this happens, this is called al-mana'. In usul al-fiqh, this is called al-mana'. When I don't accept your asl in the first place, it's called al-mana'. It's called al-mana'. It's one of the things that breaks the qiyas.
Assuming the asl also doesn't apply if it's mansukh.
Yes. So if the asl is mansukh, or the asl goes against the a nas in the sharia, we don't take the asl. Again, when we say asl, we say the hukum connected to the asl, not the asl itself. The asl is the ayah and hadith. But the hukum of the asl, we wouldn't take it and we can't use it for qiyas if it's mansukh or if it goes against the sharia, the ayat in the sharia. And so there's more, again, this because Al-Waraqaat is a summarized book. Some of the conditions of these pillars are up to 20 conditions. Like the conditions of illah, they go up to 20 conditions of the illah. For you to use a illah, satisfy 20 conditions. The Shaykh here only mentions, I think, one condition of each. So he's mentioned one condition of the fara', one condition of the asl, one of the illah, and one of the hukum, right? So just one. No. Then he says, وَمِن شَرْطِ الْعِلَّةِ, from the condition of the illah. Again, we mentioned, scholars mention more than one condition. He says one of them. One of them is أَن تَضْطَرِدَ فِي مَعْلُولَاتِهَا, that the illah needs to be muttarid. Muttarid means every time you have a asl, this is the illah for it. And it's used like that all the time to bring about that hukum. You cannot say or use a illah that's differed upon. You can't use a illah that doesn't satisfy the conditions all of the time. He says, فَلَا تَنْتَقِضُ لَفْظًا وَلَا مَعْنًا. You cannot negate the illah, and this is called naqd al-illah. By the way, the best way to respond to a mukhalif, a person who's opposing you and bringing you a qiyas, is to break down his illah. If somebody brings you a qiyas and you want to refute him, the best way to refute a qiyas is what? Break down his illah. Naqd al-illah. Just break it down. Say it's not even a illah. What's your evidence it's a illah? Khalas, his whole qiyas shatters. Okay? This is called naqd al-illah. And this is an issue, again, the author, he mentions it. I'll give you a general understanding, but we'll just run over it quickly, inshallah ta'ala. He says the illah can be broken down, naqd al-illah lafzan wala ma'nan. فلا لفظا ولا معنى. So it's either lafz or ma'na. What does it mean by lafz or ma'na? Now, something may have a illah, and this illah is more than one. It's like murakkab, it's compounded illah. Sometimes the illah of a issue is just one. And if the illah is broken and is opposed, and it's not muttarid, it doesn't apply through all the different circumstances, and it's compounded, we call this naqd al-lafz. It's a special word that the usulini have. It has nothing to do with the word lafz or with the word ma'na. It's a special mustalah terminology that the usulini use. If the illah is compounded and then it doesn't apply throughout, and there is a case or a scenario where the illah doesn't apply, it's called naqd what? Lafz. And if the illah is one, and then you find a situation where this illah doesn't apply, it's called naqd ma'na. That's what he means. I'll give you an example of each and then we'll swiftly move. An example of a illah that is murakkab, compounded in an issue, is the issue of al-qatl bil-muthaqqal, is killing somebody with a muthaqqal, with something that is heavy, as opposed to a muhaddad, something that is sharp. If you kill somebody with a sharp knife, that is called muhaddad. Thiqal or muthaqqal comes from the word thiqal, heavy. It's like crushing somebody with a heavy object. I take this table, I throw it on, I can't. But if I took this table and I threw it on somebody, and the weight of this table crushed the person and the person died. Is it the same or not? There's a discussion. We know if somebody kills somebody with a knife, there is what is called qisas, retribution. So, life for a life, eye for an eye, you can retribute back. Is it the same case for a qatl that is muthaqqal? Some of the scholars say no, and some of the scholars say yes. The group of scholars that say yes, they say yes. What's the illah? They say the fact that it's qatl, that is amd and udwan. Three things are in it. It's a killing. If I kill you with an object crushing you, or I kill you with a sharp knife, the first illah is what? They're both killing. The first commonality is they're both killing. Number two is amd. It's both intentional. Number three, it's both udwan. I've transgressed. What goes against this if the killing is not transgression? If you, for example, there's the had punishment, and somebody is meant to be sacrificed, or not sacrificed, what's the word for it? Executed in the Sharia, in an Islamic court, in a Muslim country, then this person killing him is not called qatl, that is udwan. Why? Because it's a part of the Sharia. So he wouldn't get the same, there's no qiyas for him, that's his job. He's been appointed that job from the ruler. The point is, there are three illah here: qatl, amd, udwan. Now, is it always the case that a person who kills somebody is going to given a qiyas or a qisas, retribution? Is there a case where if I kill somebody, my life is not taken in return, which is yes, yeah. No, from the past. I mean today in our Sharia. But that doesn't satisfy. I'm saying it's amd, udwan, and it's qatl, but it still opposes. These three illah are found, but it's still an exception to the rule. Ahsant. If a father kills the son, there is no qisas. If a father kills a son, and he goes to a court of law, that father cannot be killed in retribution for the killing of the son. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا تقام الحدود في المساجد. The capital punishment are not established in the masjid, and ولا يقتل الوالد بالولد. You do not kill, meaning in hudud, in capital punishments, a father in exchange for him killing his son. It's an exception to the rule. So these three are the illah we've already established is the illah. In the case of the father and the son, does it apply? It's an exception. And this was three illah, right? What do we call this? Naqdul lafz. If the illah is only one illah, and it doesn't apply, and there's an exception to this circumstance, it's called naqdu al-ma'na. Example, zakah is allowed zakah happens in bahimatul an'am, in the what's bahima called? Cattle, in the cattle. A group of scholars say the hikmah behind why cattle and sheep, so cattle is sheep, goats and camels, why you have to do zakah or give zakah on them. They say it is muwasatu al-faqir. It is giving contentment and bringing the heart of the poor person closer. You desire sheep and camels, right? The poor person desires it as well. They say this is the illah. Is there a case where this illah doesn't apply, it doesn't bring about the fruit of its qiyas? For example, in the case of zakah on the jawahir, on not gold and silver, but gems, diamond, rubies, is there zakah? Huh? No. If commodity is different, if you're buying and selling it, that's different, if that's your business. That's urud al-tijara. I'm saying, I possess diamonds or rubies, I don't, but if I did, do I have to give zakah? No, everybody agrees. But isn't this also fine? Is there illah not found in it? Doesn't the poor person not desire diamonds and rubies? He does. So illah was found, but what? The hukum was not taken all the way. So it's an exception to the rule. So what do we say then? It is naqd al-ma'na. And this is all this mahdis. Again, there's a lot more details to it. And if you don't understand it, just understand, if the illah is compounded and it breaks, then what is it called? Laf, naqd al-laf. If the illah is one illah, not more than one, then it breaks, what is it called? Naqd al-ma'na.
What's the reason why, even though the illah is found in diamonds and rubies, why do you say that's an exception?
So there's other nusus, but in any case, it's not even the illah. Zakat is no illah, it's ta'abudi. It's ta'abudi aslan. But this is from the angle of just giving an example. Zakat, the illah behind it is what? No illah, it's ta'abudi. Allah told us, وَآتُ الزَّكَاةَ خَلَص. Yeah, so there is no illah. This is just from the angle of giving you an example, to make you understand the issue. So this is the shart of the illah. The last shart he brings is the shart of the hukum. Hukum is what? The ruling itself that is transferred from the asl to the fara. He says, أن يكون مثل العلة في النفي والإثبات. And this is what the scholars refer to as al-hukmu yaduru bi'illati wujudan wa adaman. Every time you find the illah, then the hukum is given. And every time the illah is absent, the hukum is not given. What is it called? Al-dawaran. Or you can say al-hukmu yaduru bi'illatihi wujudan wa adaman. Every time you find the illah of iskar, it is what? Haram. No iskar, halal. Is this always the case? There's a bit of detail to it. I'll give you an example to make you think, and you will agree with the fact that there is detail. If I say there is a big amount of water, let's say more than qullatayn, 6,000 liters of water, urine falls into it, makes it impure by changing the color of it. What's the hukum of the 600 liters of water? Najis. Sah? Agreed? Good. The illah is found, which is najasa, and taghyir, which shows the najasa, and therefore it is haram, and it is najis. If then I leave it in the air, 11 days later, the color changes back to the original color. Do I say the water is pure? I haven't put anything, it's changed by itself. The illah is now absent. Do I say the hukum is now tahara, tahir? No. So he's saying illah is gone. What do you say? You're saying shaking your head, huh? Yeah, so here, this is why I said, it is a correct principle. Al-hukmu yaduru ma'illatihi wujudan wa adaman. But in certain cases, you have more than one illah. And just because one illah has been removed doesn't prevent us from saying the ruling has automatically changed. Because you can have other illahs or ilal which changes the hukum. So again, this is where I said 1 plus 1 is not 2. You look into things with more detail, inshallah ta'ala. It's not black and white and just mathematical equation. Illah found, halal. Illah not found, halal. No, it's not like that. Okay? There's more things that you have to look into. Ala kulli hal, he just wants to give you a condition of the hukum, which is the condition of the hukum is the hukum is always transferred from the asl to the far' if there's an illah. If not, it's not transferred. But we said there is a bit more detail to it. The last thing is he gives you, and he mentions something. He says, وَالْعِلَّةِ هِيَ الْجَالِبَةُ لِلْحُكْمِ. Illah is the thing that pulls the hukum. Here, there's a big discussion. And because the author is Ash'ari al-Aqidah, he's from the Ash'a'ira, al-Ma'ali al-Juwayni, he uses the word jaliba. Jaliba means the illah is dragging the hukum from the asl to the fara'. Now the question is there illah determining the hukum, or is it Allah that determined the hukum of this issue? Allah. So illah is not doing the job and pulling it by itself. And here, the opposite to them is where the Mu'tazila come in place. The Mu'tazila and the Ash'ari have two opposing madahib. And it goes back to an issue, al-taqbih wal-tahsin al-aqliyayn. It goes back to an issue of aqidah, which is why they choose the specific word. So the Ash'ari will say jaliba. The illah is dragging the hukum. The Mu'tazila will say no. It is al-muqtadi al-hukum. It necessitates the hukum. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah will say what? Al-mu'arrifati lil-hukum. It introduces the hukum to you, or makes the hukum apparent to you. So they use different words based on the aqidah. So again, we will say this word is incorrect, jaliba, because jaliba means what? The illah is doing the work itself, independent of Allah. The illah is giving you the ruling. It's mu'athiratun bidati. We say no, don't use the word jaliba. Just put a mark, say jaliba is not a good word to use, should have used something else, like al-mu'arrifati lil-hukum. Okay? And again, this is just a side benefit, inshallah. And then he says, وَالْحُكْمُ هُوَ الْمَجْلُوبُ لِلْعِلَّةِ. Again, he uses the same word, majloob. Hukum is what? Hukum is the thing that is dragged from the asl to the fara'. You say, well, it's not dragging it. It's not being dragged. It's been given the hukum by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here for now. I think enough of qiyas for one day. We'll stop here inshallah ta'ala. In the next lesson, we'll take a few smaller issues, qawa'id that he mentions. And then the last issue I think he brings is tartib al-adillah. We've seen the different evidences. He will then put them in order of strength. And the last issue is the issue of al-mufti wal-mustafti. We discussed the whole of usul al-fiqh, but now who is now capable and who fulfills the criteria of now using usul al-fiqh? What's the condition of the mufti and the mustafti? We'll go into a bit more detail and then the book will finish inshallah ta'ala. Any questions? If the sisters have any questions, you can put it in the group inshallah ta'ala. Sam, tell them. Question? Now, so we didn't mention now, barakallahu fiqh. Qiyas nafi al-fariq is a type of qiyas. Again, is differed upon whether it's qiyas or not. Nafi al-fariq, again, remember these three? These are qiyas bil-jami'. It's using something that is common between the asl and the fara'. In the first case, you're using a illah. The second case, you're using something that indicates the illah. The third, there's no illah but resemblance. But you're looking for something common. Qiyas nafi al-fariq is when you're using lack of difference. I'll give you an example. The brother's in the lesson, he's writing with a black pen. And I say, Akhi, don't write with a black pen. Put it away. He puts it away. He brings out a red pen and starts writing. Has he listened to my command? Or has he not listened to my command? I said, Akhi, stop writing with the black pen, put it down. And he being smart and cheeky, takes out a red one, and puts the black one inside and writes with the red one. Now, what would I say? You're wrong, because qiyas nafi al-fariq, there is no difference between the black and the white in what I intended from it, which is stop writing. Stop writing. There is no farq. There's nothing common in the sense, there is no illah between the two. There's no commonality between the two. We're not looking, even if there is a commonality, we're not looking for it. We're looking for, there is no difference. There is no difference between the two. Another example that the fuqaha they mention is, for example, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't say uff to your parents. They will put all the illah aside, any commonality aside. What's the hukum of saying, oh, or was it kiss my teeth, right? Can't teeth. What's the hukum of doing that to your parents? Haram. Again, in a case where they're not using illah, let's say without using illah, why would you say it's haram? There is no difference between uff and oho and kissing your teeth. It's the same. It's nafi al-fariq. So even without using illah, we can do qiyas. What is this qiyas called? Nafi al-fariq. There is no difference between the two. So we're not trying to find a commonality between the two and give it the ruling of each other. What are we trying to find? Lack of commonality. Again, is this a type of qiyas or not? مختلف فيه.
Is that what he uses to say that he doesn't do qiyas?
If he does what?
Instead of, because he's against qiyas.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see that he
He-
does this.
Yeah, it's again, it's look. If you think of the word nafil fariq is what lack of lack of difference is what by meaning, by definition is what jama', similarity, jama'. So what like even if you say, I don't know if Ibn Hazm uses it, but I'm just saying I know he sometimes uses a form of qiyas. I don't know what form he uses, but from what I read, he uses a type similar to qiyas. Again, you can't escape qiyas. You can use qiyas in everyday life. If I see people treat me in a certain way, I start to make a pattern, and everybody treats me that way, I will be reserved with them. It's qiyas, I use it in everyday life. So he uses something, but I don't know if he uses nafil fariq. He may actually. Allah A'lam. But that's nafil fariq. Does that answer your question? So the question from the sisters, what's the connection between the author's Ash'ari Aqidah and the use of the terminology when he says Al-'illah hiya janiba? Again, it's an issue I didn't want to go into a bit more detail because it requires a bit of a background information. But it goes back to an issue, and you can research it, it's called At-Tahseen wa Taqbih al-Aqliyayn. And the Ash'ari, they believe that the issues they give, and again the Mu'tazila, they believe the issues and descriptions of things, they are مؤثرة بذاتها. They have an effect by itself. The effect by itself. Sorry, this is the Ash'ara. They believe it has an effect by itself. So they say things, they affect other things by themselves independent of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's where they're going to wrong in a lot of the issues of Aqidah, like the issues of Al-Qadr, the Qadariyya and the Jabriyya, things that they say the Qadr is created by the human beings. The human beings creates his own destiny. So they remove the authority from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something similar to that, where they remove or they give power to the effects by themselves. So they say the illah is the one who's giving effect. The illah is the one who's bringing the hukum from the asal to the far' by itself, independent of Allah. So again, when it comes to this word, we put a question mark. When we say jaliba, we will ask this Ash'ari and we'll ask this person who says hiya jaliba. The illah is the one who drags it. We say, what do you mean by illah is dragging it? The illah by itself, or the illah drags it as a result of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? If he says the second one, what do we say? No problem. But if he says no, the illah by itself, that's the problem. So it's more of an aqidah issue for them. And the Mu'tazila, they are in opposite to the Ash'ara. They will give the authority more to the other side, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they say, no, the hukum doesn't have an effect. Allah said it and that's it. We say, no. Allah said it, but then the illah, we have to play the sharia. So the sharia, if there's a hukum, there's a illah, we take the ruling and we apply it. So there's two extremes, and Ahlul Sunnah is always in the middle ground. So it's an issue of aqidah. It's an issue of aqidah, and again, like I mentioned, this is an issue that came way back. This is when Ilm al-Kalam entered Usul al-Fiqh. And that's why we said, you look at a lot of the definitions of the Usuleen, there's always back and forth. Scholars of Mantiq, they say, no, that word is not the best. No, that word should have been better. No, that's a bad definition. This is a ta'rifu bil-rasm, this is a ta'rifu bil-had. Go back and forth. So again, without going into detail, we say it would have been better for him to not use the word jaliba. It's a vague word. What does he mean by jaliba by itself? Is it by itself? Is it by the permission of Allah? That's what we say, inshallah. No. Munasaba. Again, this word munasaba, when you go to the shurrah of this book, Al-Waraqaat, when you go back to Jalaluddin al-Mahalli Sharh, there's a lot of back and forth regarding what they mean by munasaba. Suyuti has his own opinion. I don't want to mention the differences, but we say for now, as a basic understanding, munasaba is appropriateness. This is the right choice of illah. This is the right choice of illah. So for example, in iskar, what is the right choice of illah? In khamr, what is the right choice of illah? Iskar. The right choice of illah in don't saying off to your parents is what? Al-idam. So the right choice of illah. You're choosing the right illah and determining the right illah. That's al-munasaba. Any more questions? Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here for now. See you next week. We'll continue the book. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruhu wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.